We're moving forward as a program without him. I said it to the guys today. There's no one that's bigger than the power T.
And just like that, the Vols' five-star and $8 million quarterback is no longer a member of the team. Josh Heupel moving on from Nico Iamaleava after a dramatic couple of days on Rocky Top. Nico's off to the portal, and Tennessee is not far behind as they are now looking for a signal caller. Welcome into the Ultimate College Football Show. He is Smoke Dixon. He is Cooper Petagna. I am Emily Proud. And boy, it has been a crazy couple of days for the Tennessee football program. We're going to get their thoughts in just a little bit. But for you first, let's go ahead and lay out the timeline of events. Just how did we get here? Well, on Thursday, we got conflicting reports of ongoing contract negotiations between Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava. And in the midst of all the chaos, though, Nico still attended a team dinner later that night. Then on Friday, he no-showed to practice, and no one on staff could reach him throughout the day, and that was apparently the final straw for Josh Heupel. So on Saturday morning, Heupel informed the team that they are moving on from Nico, and his locker was already emptied. All of this before the Vols spring game, Saturday afternoon. So looking at all of this, this is what we would call unprecedented for college football, right? We've seen holdouts in bowl games and stuff, but a spring holdout of a player of this magnitude, we have not seen it before. So just first off, what were you thinking as you watched all of this unfold over the weekend?
How did we get here from this five-star talent that was ascending in the right direction to the point now of being removed from the spring game? And again, we're talking about practice. So how do we go from him being our main guy, from missing out one day in a dinner, to being removed from his team in 24 hours?
Really sad, really unfortunate. I think you and I were talking before this, and no winners in this, no winners for Tennessee, no winners for Nico Iamaleava and his camp. And, what's unfortunate, you look at it from an objective evaluator's lens. You look at it, and Nico, a very talented, physically gifted quarterback, the number 2 player in the country behind Arch Manning in 2023. He's ranked the number 1 player in the 24/7 sports transfer portal as well. And a lot of people will look at last season where he was 10-2 as a starter, lost the playoff game against Ohio State. He's only started 14 games, and it was a guy that didn't play a lot of football in high school as well. He needs continuity. He needs structure for him to be able to continue to develop and ascend into that ceiling we continue to talk about. You look at last year, lower 60% completion rate, a guy that only had 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. We've seen the height of this offense in Tennessee under a guy like Hendon Hooker at the quarterback position. Tennessee didn't do a lot in the transfer portal. A lot of what was to be expected was going to be on the shoulders of Nico Iamaleava taking the next step. Now, for a young quarterback entering his sophomore season, he's going to have to go learn a new system, learn a new structure, learn a new environment. So for you to compromise on the long-term stability and upside of a young prospect like this, it's a really tough situation, and it's going to hurt him in the long term as he tries to seek more short-term, which I would guess, financial gain.
We'll talk about what's next for him in the short term in terms of his transfer portal market, also what's next for Tennessee in terms of their transfer portal market as well. But I want to get your thoughts real quick, Smoke, on what Coop had to say just about how Tennessee and Nico in general, this is not good for his long-term development. What were your thoughts as far as how this affects Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback, in the short term?
Well, short term, he needs development. And like Cooper just said, he needs to throw the ball and understand concept and just be in a building where he's allowed to be that way and not look at everything outside of football. Yeah. Because right now, this does not look like it's a football decision. It's a financial decision that the player should not ever have to worry about. So really, you need to look at your representation and say, are you guys doing the best thing for Nico, or is everybody else doing for the betterment of themselves?
Yes, and apparently this dates back all the way to December. If it seems like it happened so quickly, there were apparently some rumblings, according to our own Josh Pate, that he could have potentially held out of the Vols postseason game. Let's take a listen what Pate had to say.
And it's been happening behind the scenes. This is not even, guys, I cannot stress this enough, this is not even remotely close to the only instance. There are far more screwed up instances than this happening right now probably with your own collective or your own general manager and your own program. You just don't know about it. This stuff was happening last December during the playoffs, with this kid included, but not just this kid. They were trying to get more money out of Tennessee, and other players on playoff teams were trying to get more money out of playoff teams before the playoff games. They were trying to leverage playoff participation because, do you know why? You want to know what the explainer was? The explainer was, well, our client, half these folks don't know the I comes before the E in the word, but hey, our client is being paid X amount of money to participate in 12 games, maybe a 13th if you make the conference championship game, but you guys made the playoff. He should make more money. This is the kind of BS that's happening behind the scenes right now. There is no structure.
That seems to be the common sentiment among the college football public right now, is that there's no structure, and because of what's happened with the NCAA and everything in the sport, that it allowed something like this to happen. But ultimately, Josh Heupel had to be the one to step in and say, I'm shutting this down. What effect does his move and kind of this maybe jut off from what we've seen from player empowerment, what effect does that have on the sport as a whole?
I think there are a lot of players maybe of Nico Iamaleava's stature looking at how this plays out over the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, and sees, okay, where does Nico ultimately end up? Because that's going to tell the story of the result of this whole fiasco of what we've seen over the last couple of days. And you look at Nico and you look at his situation, and a lot's been made about what he had coming back, right? Some of the conversation has been, well, this really wasn't a financial decision. They weren't happy with what Tennessee was bringing back. And you think about Tennessee, Lance Hurd, a former five-star at the left tackle spot. They bring in David Sanders, potentially battling it out for the right tackle spot. They brought in some guys, Sam Pendleton from Notre Dame, Wendell Moe from Arizona. So they tried to reinforce the trenches. But ultimately, at the end of the day, how we started the show with Josh Heupel saying nobody's bigger than the team, that was him planting the flag and saying, okay, at some point, we've had enough. And even though this might set us back in the short term, this is in the best long-term interest of the program. And I said it today on X that, Josh Heupel is probably getting a lot of thank you cards from a lot of coaches around the country right now, because I think a lot of coaches feel this internally, but they don't know where ultimately, like, hey, at what point do you have to, pucker up and kiss that baby goodbye? Yeah. You just got to let them go for the betterment of the team. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And certainly, like I said earlier, there's no winners out of this. And I don't think Nico, and we're going to talk about potential fits a little bit later, Nico needs continuity. He needs structure. He needs to be able to continue to develop in the same system that he's been in over the last 2 years. There is no better place for him that he's going to find outside of Tennessee. There's nowhere. It doesn't matter where he ends up. He needs that continuity, the same language, force multiplier. He doesn't get that now. So it's an unfortunate situation. But to get back to the main question, how does it impact teams going forward? I think teams now have a little bit of leverage because there is an example there to say, hey, listen, the grass isn't always greener. Your hand can get stuck in the cookie jar, and then all of a sudden this can be a situation that doesn't work out to your advantage.
Cool. Back in December, I just had the opportunity to sit in the coach's office that was in the playoffs. And talking to Coach, I was like, Coach, you ready for this? And I was hyped up. Coach, he was beaten down. For the fact that he was like, Smoke, you don't understand that I just had my entire backup defensive line walk into my office, my backup corner walk into my office, tell me they're not going to play or else. So I went back and just thought about it and was like, well, I get it. And two things can be true. We all signed up to play football, but now financially everyone's benefiting from this except the players. Coaches are getting playoff bonuses. Everybody's getting a bonus except the players. So why isn't it fair at some point for us to look in and adjust how we're thinking about college football to help mend this? Because right now we're saying the system's broken, but it's only broken because the adults are the only ones that's winning in this situation. The players are sitting back, and yes, they do have power, because as much as you can remove that player from your locker room and think that you're doing well, if the player affects winning, the bottom line that we're all talking about, yeah, your job is truly going to be affected as well too. Because if you lose, you're going to get fired. The player is still going to have another opportunity to go somewhere else and get paid, and that's what we have to look out on this side. It's not just a one-sided thing. Two things can be true. The players have to abide by what they signed, but the coaches also need to realize that at some point they need to look in and say, from the other lens, and say, well, if I was a player, would I not want to get compensated properly for making a 16-game run instead of 13? 3 that I'm not getting paid for, that you might win a national championship?
So who's to blame for this then?
I don't think there's anyone for the blame. I think the system is just broken. And until we get structure around how we can navigate around the system, I think we're all flying by the pants.
But in the meantime, we can draw this back to some conversations that we've had big picture-wise over the last couple of weeks about GMs and their job.
Right.
They have to be the ones that have to take the proactive step to say, all right, we've seen this play out on behalf of Tennessee, and this is a nightmare situation, and this is something that we can all learn from. We talked about the hire that Florida made at general manager with Nick Polk, bringing him over from the Atlanta Falcons. He worked with athletes first. His forte really being on the salary cap negotiation side. That's important, and I think all teams can learn from that and say, hey, do we have the infrastructure in place to make sure that our deals that we negotiate, that we get to an SEC championship or we get to a conference championship or we get to a playoff game, we're not going to be in a situation where then we're held hostage by the player, where we have to go back, renegotiate up against the clock to make sure we can even field the team for one of the most important games on the schedule.
Coop, Doug Whaley, general manager of the Buffalo Bills, taught me this valuable lesson. Don't ever get to the finish line with a player that you have to re-up. Get to him before he gets there, because the second that he gets there, somebody else has his ear, and you've lost out.
It's hard to tell when a player's going to get there, though, when there's no contracts. So the contract is supposed to be for both sides in this instance.
And I can easily tell you, when they're getting there, when they affect the bottom line of winning.
Yeah.
And you know that they're your starter, and you're looking at your roster, and you don't have anyone else to compete with them, get to them. Because if you lose them, you're losing the locker room and your team.